Hello, everyone, and welcome to another installment of the Mohawk Regional Information Center's Summer of 2020 Professional Development Series. My name is Chris Schaefer, and I'm with the Mohawk Model Schools team. And before we get started today, I just wanted to give you a brief overview of some of the sessions we have coming up for the rest of this summer. Please do keep in mind as I go through these sessions that if you'd like to register for any of them, you can head on over to mohawk.org/PD. For some of the sessions we have coming up, we do have different types of sessions this summer. The first group being these live YouTube sessions that similar to the one you're attending today. Some of the topics we have coming up are Start Writing with Google Keep tomorrow, July 22nd at 10 a.m. Using Technology for Authentic Assessments in the Elementary Classroom, July 28th at 10 a.m. Hacking G Suite with the Explore tool, July 29th at 10 a.m. Digital Badging, August 18th at 1 p.m. Leveraging Nearpod in the Classroom, August 21st at 10 a.m. Creating a Virtual Classroom with Google Sites, August 24th at 10 a.m. We also have some sessions that will be delivered via virtual meeting via a mechanism like Google Meet, WebEx, or Zoom. Some of the sessions we'll be covering there are Building Relationships with Students in an Online Environment, July 28th at 10 a.m. Motivating Students in an Online Environment, July 30th at 10 a.m. Maximizing Virtual Manipulatives in Elementary Mathematics, August 4th at 10 a.m. Finally, we do have some fully online courses coming up as well. We have some that are already ongoing, that have already started, but we do have a few that are yet to start. One of those is Motivating Students with Technology, which starts July 27th. Another would be Google Sites More Than a Website, August 11th. Again, thank you for joining us today. And if you want to register for any of these sessions, head on over to mohawk.org/PD. Now I'll turn it right over to Kristen.
Hi everyone, my name is Kristen Spinella. I am part of the Model Schools team, and I'm here today to talk to you about interactive notebooks. So when I was in the classroom as a fourth grade teacher, I used to love using interactive notebooks. What I didn't love so much was all of the time it took for my students to cut and paste and all of the pieces that ended up missing. So I felt like by the time that we got to the actual interactive piece, we were already moving on to the next topic. Making those notebooks digital is a great way to kind of avoid those pitfalls that you can run into with interactive notebooks. So today I'm going to walk you step by step on how to create interactive notebooks, and we're going to look at 3 different types of interactive templates that you can use to really custom fit your curriculum in the classroom. So let's get started. Here on the screen, I have created kind of an example notebook with a few types of interactive activities that we're going to look at and how to create today. Okay, so the first one here is a where I am on the map activity. And some of you may be familiar with this and have even done it in your own classroom. So I have recreated the template here on my screen, and my students are clicking on the individual tabs. It will show them all of these different locations where I am located on the map. Now, this is a complete project, a completed template. I'm going to show you today how you can create a template and then share it with your students so they can put in their own information. Okay, another template that I want to show you is this template here. So when I was in the classroom, we used to talk about the life cycle of a butterfly. So what I've done is I've recreated that template here. And again, this is a completed product, but you can leave just the template so your students are putting in the pictures and the words. But now when my students are clicking on this, it will bring them around the entire life cycle of a frog. One additional example of what I'm calling a lift the tab, because if it was in a notebook, my students would kind of be lifting things up to look underneath, or in the example of a life cycle of a butterfly, they're kind of spinning that wheel. But here, what they can do is they can click again on each of these tabs, and it will kind of lift to see what is underneath. So let's go ahead and take a look at how I can start creating my notebook and replicating some of these templates as well. I'm going to start by opening a new tab, and I'm going to go to slides.google.com, Or I can click that little waffle icon here in the upper right-hand corner and I can select slides there as well. Once into my slides, I'm going to choose to start with a blank template. And I am going to label my template. So this one I'm going to label Interactive Notebook Webinar. Okay. Now that it has a name, I can go ahead and get started creating the template or the notebook itself. I'm going to erase my text boxes. And the example that I was just showing you was a horizontal layout, which I have here on the screen. I do have the option to take my layout and change it into a vertical layout. To do that, I can go to File, Page Setup. I'm going to click this little drop-down option and I'm going to choose Custom. Here I'm going to put in 8.5, and that's going to be by 11 inches. And I'm going to hit Apply. And now you'll notice that I have a much more vertical layout versus my horizontal layout. So if this is the layout that I want for my notebook, it is going to affect every slide after. So with Google Slides, you cannot have one slide be a vertical layout and the next be a horizontal. So really keep that in mind as you're establishing your notebook and how you want the orientation to fall, because that will be the same for all of the slides you create. Something else you want to keep in mind as you're creating is the length of your notebook. Digital, it will run a little bit slower if you have a large number of slides. With that in mind, you may want to create a notebook for each individual module or maybe each individual topic that you're teaching in the classroom, just so that it's not becoming a cumbersome slide deck where your students have a large number of slides and it's taking a long time to load. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually create the feel of a notebook. I'm going to do that by selecting this background button here. And I'm going to choose my image. Now I have a couple of different options on where I can find images. So I can upload from my computer. I can take a picture with my camera. If I have a website URL, I can enter that here. Google Photos, my Google Drive, or Google Image Search, which is what I'm going to use today. Now in the search box, I'm going to type in Composition Notebook. And I'm going to label it cover. I'm going to make it a little bit more specific. Okay, so here are all my options for Google Images. And I'm going to select the one that I feel would work best. So I'm going to just select this first image here, and I'm going to select Insert and click Done. So now I have the cover of my notebook. If I would like to customize it, I can choose the text box option, and I can label it. So maybe I want to label this Interactive Notebook, or maybe you want your students to write their name on there. Okay, you can really customize it to best fit your needs. I'm going to make this text larger, so it kind of lines up with those, and I'm going to center. Okay, so now that my cover is all set, I want to make a table of contents. And I'm making a table of contents because this is going to make it easier to navigate through my notebook, both for myself and for my students. So again, I'm going to just erase these text boxes and I'm going to start with a blank slate. I'm going to select this shape icon here at the top, and I'm going to select the shape here, and I'm just going to drag and drop. I'm going to have my shape be a black, and I want my text to be white. And I'm just going to label this as Table of Contents. And I'm going to format my text to best fit that shape. 36, and let's have it in a school bell. Very fun. And I'm going to add one more shape in here around the outside, just for visual appeal. So I'm going to enter a square here. I'm going to make this a 4 border width, transparent, and black. Okay, so one great thing that I want to mention right now is, if you can see here, my table of contents almost looks like it's crossed off because of the line from my shape. So if I click on my shape, I now have that blue outline. I'm going to go up to this Arrange tab, and I'm going to select Order, and I want to actually send this to the back. So what happens when you insert images or you insert text boxes into a slide is it almost stacks up in layers. So when you click this Arrange tab, you're actually ordering those images or those text boxes based on the layers. So if I'm sending to the back like I just did, that goes to the very last layer. Sending backward or sending forward would send it back or forward one layer. And then bring to the front would bring it all the way to the very front layer. So just keep that in mind as you're organizing your text and your images within your interactive notebook. Okay, so now that that is set, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my text for what types of activities I'm going to include in my notebook. So the first one I said it was going to be a lift the tab that we are going to look at. And I'm going to make that into a size 18. I'll bold it and I'll leave that there. Let's leave that there. Okay, I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it. And the next type of activity we're going to look at is going to be a drag and drop. And then our final activity is going to be a fill in the blank. Now, the great thing about having this digital as well is that if things change or if I want my pages in a different order within my notebook, I can easily rearrange my table of contents and I'm not having to rip pages out of a notebook or worry that they're already in a certain order. So it makes it very customizable and easy to just put it in the order that you're really looking for, because maybe as you get going through your notebook, you're realizing that certain things aren't lining up the way they should. You can really customize it based on the order that you prefer and just making changes within your slide deck. Okay, so now that my table of contents is built, we're going to start building my Lift the Tab activity. To get started building a Lift the Tab activity, I'm going to enter a new slide. And there's a couple of different ways that I can build templates. So with each of the templates that I'm going to show you a different way that you can build. It's completely a personal choice on how you feel comfortable building your template, but I do want you to be aware of the options that are available to you. So this first one I'm going to build right in slides. So I'm going to, again, start with a blank template. And I'm going to start by inserting shapes. So I'm going to click my shape icon here. And I'm going to select circle. I want to do that where am I on the map. I'm going to kind of show you how that was built as an example of a flip the tab activity. And again, your templates are customizable and it's completely up to your imagination. So if you already have an interactive notebook you're using, you can use those templates that you have there and kind of recreate them in a digital format. So now that I've selected my shape, I am going to drag and drop that onto the screen. Drag and drop. And as I drag and drop, I'm holding down my shift key just to help my circle stay in true proportion. Now that I have my circle there, I'm going to fill the color. I want it to be red on the bottom and I want no outline. Okay, so there's my first layer of my circles. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to right click on that slide and I'm going to click duplicate slide. Now I have two slides here, both with red circles. So I'm going to click on that red circle, I'm going to copy, and I'm going to paste that circle. This circle is going to be orange in color, and I'm actually going to make it a little bit smaller than the circle prior so I have space to write my text below. So I'm just going to format that shape to how I kind of want it to fit there over that other circle using the resizing handles on the side. Okay, that looks great. Now I'm going to duplicate this slide. And now I'm going to copy the orange circle and I'm going to paste. And the next color I want is yellow. And again, I'm going to resize. And I'm going to repeat those steps until I have all of my circles drawn. Okay, now that I have all of my circles here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to enter my text boxes. I'm going to select the text box icon here and drag and drop, and I'm going to enter my text. So where I am on the map. And I'm going to format that text for my image. Let's see, I'll do 60. Center. And perfect. Okay, now I need to add my additional text boxes. So I'm going to add the world. Sorry, I'm going to add my world. And I'm going to copy and paste that. And I'm going to say my country. Copy and paste that. My state. My town or my city, depending on where you live and what district you're teaching in. And finally, my street. And this could be a great get to know you activity for back to school time, to introduce interactive notebooks and kind of your expectations with them and how to use them. So now I have that labeled. I need to go through and I need to label all of the slides in addition to that first slide. Okay, so now that I have all of those labeled, I need to set it so that my students are not able to move them around on the screen, because when they're putting in their information, I don't want this template itself to change. So let's take a look at the first way that you can go about doing that. I'm going to select my first slide. I'm going to go up to File, Download, and I'm going to download that as a JPEG. And I'm going to need to do that for all of the slides that I have drawn on. Okay, so now they're all images. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete all of these slides that I just created, and I'm going to enter a new slide, and this one's going to be blank. Okay. Now I'm going to click this insert, and I'm going to go back to that image that we talked about earlier, but this time I'm going to upload from my computer. So I'm going to need to go to my downloads, and I'm going to need to find those circles that I just drew. And I'm going to insert the images here, and then I'm just going to resize them so that they fill my screen appropriately. And I'm going to do that for each circle that I drew. So that's my first slide. I'm going to create an additional slide, insert image, upload from computer, search my downloads for those circles. Do this one next. Okay, so now that all of my circles are added, I'm going to need to go and hyperlink all of the words here. That way when a student clicks on a specific word, it will bring them to that slide. So let's take a look at this slide, for example, my street. I'm going to put a shape around this word because I've saved it as an image. I no longer have that text box available to me. So I'm going to drag and drop a shape over. I'm going to make the shape transparent, and I'm going to make the outline transparent. I'm going to click on the shape itself, and I'm going to insert link. Now, when my students click this slide, it will bring them to slide 4. I'm going to do the same for the rest of the words here. So I'm going to choose that shape again. I'm going to drag it over those words, make it transparent, hyperlink it to the appropriate slide. So this will be slide 5. Six. Seven. And 8. Okay, so I'm going to need to repeat those steps for each of the slides that have my circles. For the sake of time, I'm just going to leave it with this slide, but I want to show you how this works. So when I share a copy with my students, which I'll talk about how to do at the end of this webinar, my students will click on the word that they want, and then they'll get a little pop-up that will bring them to slide. And now what they can do, so they're at my state. Now what they can do is they can choose insert image, and they can upload an image. So if they have one that they have on their computer or saved to their drives or their Google Photos, or they want to take one with a camera, they could insert it here. They can also just search the web. So I can look for a New York State map. And I can select the one that I think best fits my image and click insert, and then resize that. And there you have it. So your students will see these as additional tabs. If they go into present mode, they can just easily click through, and it will appear as if all the different tabs are revealing themselves. Next, we're going to look at how to create a drag and drop activity within your notebook. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at some drag and drop activities that I have created for my interactive notebook. So the first is this place value chart, and you'll notice that I have designed this to go up to the millions place. So the way this is designed to interact with my students is I have a problem that I have created up here in the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to move the screen over so it's out of the way. What my students will do is they will take the place value chips and they will drag and drop them up into the place value chart. So they have 100, 20, 3. Okay. And then they have plus 200, 11. So now what my students can do is they can count these up. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So I have 334. Okay. And then that's completed, and they have shown their work for that problem. So I have 334, and that's completed. Now I could do multiple slides just like this, just by duplicating and then entering in new problems, but I'll show you more about that as we get into designing our slides. Another example of a drag and drop activity is this water cycle image that I have selected. So all I've done is I've Googled a water cycle image, and then on the side I have put in shapes with words inside of them that my students can drag and drop. So they are going to drag them right onto the image to correctly label what is happening within the water cycle. Okay. So just a couple of different options. One other one that I've created based on social studies is this interactive timeline. So what I would do is I would start with all of the boxes pulled off to the side. And my students would then be responsible for dragging and dropping those boxes onto the timeline. If you wanted To make this a bit more challenging for your students, they could be filling in the information as well based on the topic that you are studying. So let's go ahead and look at how we can create some drag and drop interactive pieces for our notebook. I'm going to go back here to my demo notebook, and I'm going to insert a new slide again. And I'm going to use my place value chart as an example of how to create a drag and drop activity. So the first thing I did was I started by creating a table. And this time I'm just going to make my table to the hundreds place, just for sake of time. Okay, so I need 3 columns, and I'm going to need 2 rows. So I'm going to insert that here. And I'm going to format it so that it best fits my space. And I have clicked on the entire table. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change my border color to black, and I want to make my lines a little bit thicker so that it's easier for my students to see. So now I have 100, tens, hundreds, tens, and ones. Okay, I'm going to make that a little bit larger of a font, center it, and bold. Okay, now I'm going to click on this line here to shorten that and give my students more space to work below. Okay. I can also change the color of this row so that it kind of stands out. So I'm going to click this paint can here, and I'm going to select this dark blue color. And I think I'm actually going to make my text white to make it a little bit easier to see, and I'm going to center in those boxes. Okay, so now I have my place value chart. That is something I don't want moving within my slide. Now my manipulatives, or in this case, my place value chips, I do want to move. So what I need to do is I need to create an image of just this chart in order to save it as a background. So the last time I did this, I downloaded my slides as JPEGs, and then I just inserted that as a background. Another option you have is to take a screenshot. So I'm going to go ahead and screenshot this table here. And on a Mac, you're hitting Command-Shift-4. If you're on a PC, I recommend using the snipping tool to take screenshots. Okay, so I have taken a screenshot of that image. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete that image, and I'm going to go back to that insert image, and I'm going to upload that image from my computer. My screenshots are saved to my desktop, so I'm going to locate that image there. All right, so now my students are able to edit the table. They can move it around the slide if they need more space, but they're not able to change it. All right, so now what I need to do is I need to create my place value chips, and I'm going to do that by choosing my shape tool. And my place value discs are going to be circles. So I'm going to put a circle below each of my spaces. I'm just going to copy and paste it so they're all the same. Okay. And now I just need to label those circles. So my hundreds circle, let me just go back to my example, was the color red. So I had red, orange, and white. So I just want to be consistent with what was in my example. So I'm going to fill this with a red, and I'm going to have a transparent outline. And then this will be orange. And your place value discs in your classroom that you're using with your students may be different colors, so you may want to keep it consistent with what you're using in your classroom. And that one's actually going to need an outline. So it's just something to keep in mind with what they're already familiar with. Okay, so I have my circles. Now I need to insert my words so they know what the value of each of those discs is. So I'm going to, again, click the shape, and I'm going to use a rectangle, and I'm going to draw in 100. Okay. I want the fill to be transparent, and I want the outline to be transparent. I'm going to make that text a little bit larger. So it's easier for my students to see. I'm going to bold it, and I'm going to center. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to actually group those two things together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both my shape, my circle, and my rectangle by holding down my Shift. So I have my rectangle selected here. Now I'm holding down Shift on my keyboard and I'm selecting my circle as well. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose this word group. So now by grouping them, when I move that image, everything moves together. Okay, and I'm going to repeat those steps for the next two shapes. So I'm going to insert a shape. This one will be 10. Bold, transparent, transparent, and center. And I'm going to group them again by holding Shift and selecting both of those shapes. And same thing again for my ones. Now to save time, you could also just create your first place value discs and then copy and paste it and just change the font or the text that's inside of it. So if you're looking for a time-saving tip, that would be my recommendation, is just copying and pasting. That's the other nice thing about creating resources digitally, is you have that option to copy and paste. So it does take a little time on the upfront to create the resources, but once they're created, you have that to just make copies for students and you don't have to recreate it each time. Okay, so now all of my place value discs are created, but if my students drag and drop them, they won't have any more to use. So I need to make a large number of discs, but I want them to be stacked one on top of the other. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do this. So I'm going to select my image that I want, and I'm going to copy that image. And now I'm just going to paste that image a large number of times. So I'm just going to keep pasting. And you paste as many times as you see fit. Okay, I think that's good there. I'm going to move this 10 disc out of the way. So what I need to do now is I need to hold down on my mouse. I need to click and drag to highlight all of those place value discs that I just drew. And you'll notice that all the ones that are selected have an outline in blue. So now I'm going to go up to this Arrange tab, and I'm going to select the Align, and I'm going to align in the center. I'm going to go back to Arrange, Align, and I'm going to select Middle. So now all of those are stacked together. So I'm going to select them all again by dragging and dropping, and I'm just going to place them under here. So now when my students start moving those discs, they have a large number to select from, so they won't run out. Okay. I'm just going to realign these so they're all together. Okay, so I'm going to repeat those steps for the next set of place value discs. So I'm going to copy the 10s, and I'm just going to keep pasting. Okay. Move my ones out of the way. Select all. Hit Arrange, Align, Center, Arrange, Align, in Middle. Okay, now I'm going to select them all again by dragging and dropping and place them underneath my place value chart. Now, if I don't select all when I'm trying to move those images around, they will move one at a time. So it's important, if you need to relocate them on the slide, that you highlight them all first by dragging and dropping and then move the images. Okay, so let's repeat this step for the ones place, and I will be ready to create my activity. So I'm going to copy, and I'm going to paste a large number of times. Again, you can paste as many times as you see fit. I'm going to drag my cursor over all of those. Arrange, Align, Center, Arrange, Align, Middle. Okay, I'm going to select all and move that here. So my final piece to this is going to be actually to insert the problems that I want my students showing with their place value discs. So what I will do is I will choose my shape tool again, and I'm going to select my square. And I'm going to give this a fill of gray with an outline of black. And that's a little too dark of gray. Let me go a little bit lighter. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to add a text box to this shape. I'm going to add 123 plus 456. I'm going to underline that bottom row to provide that equals, and I'm going to format my text. So I'm going to make it much larger, and I'm going to center it in the middle of my box. Okay, so now I'm ready to go. My students can view these problems, they can complete them on their place value chart, and they can move their disk to show their work. If you're concerned about students changing the problems that you have put here, what I would recommend is, again, screenshotting that and then inserting it as an image. So if I wanted to do that, I would use my Command-Shift-4 keys. I'm going to screenshot. I can delete that text box and I can insert that image so that my students are not editing, so that my students are not making changes to the problem that I have included on this slide. Okay, so our final type of interactive piece is going to be fill in the blank. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. So one example I have here, let me just move this camera out of the way so you can kind of see better, is a types of angle. Now this is already pre-created. If I was providing this for my class, what I would have done is I would have just kept this row with information, and then I would have asked my class to fill in the vocabulary and draw examples of those types of angles. And what I've done for the drawing of the angles is I've actually just used this line tool, and I drew my own angles using that line feature. Now, they're not going to be completely accurate. I'm sure that's not a true 90-degree angle, but as a teacher, I can tell, do my students truly understand that an obtuse angle is larger than 90 degrees, and acute is smaller, and then a right is equal to 90 degrees based on what they're drawing? Okay, so it gives me an overview of, are they truly understanding the information? Another example here, just if you have some sequencing that you want your students to do, I just kind of created this fun little template using shapes. And then we talked about this timeline prior. This, if you wanted, you could actually delete all of this and then just ask your students to fill in the text. So you could have already had it preset on your timeline. You could have that preset on your timeline, and your students have to fill in what happened on those dates. So let's take a look at how we can create some fill-in-the-blank templates. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm actually going to create a Google Drawing. So I'm going to open a new tab, and I'm going to go to drawings.google.com. And now you can see here that I have a workspace. Whatever I draw on here is going to have a transparent background. So you can see that little checkerboard pattern. That's telling me that whatever I put on top of that is going to be transparent behind. So that's a nice feature if you're trying to overlap many different shapes or different images, that the background is transparent. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to start by inserting a table, because I want to create the types of angles chart that I showed you in the example. So I'm going to select 3 columns and 3 rows. I'm going to format that to fit my workspace. And I'm actually going to make my lines black, and I'm going to make them a little thicker to make them stand out. Drag this in a little bit. It's getting a little off the workspace there. I want to make sure that I have enough space. Okay, that looks great. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually insert text boxes up here to label the types of angles that I want my students to discuss. So this will be acute. This will be obtuse. And this will be right. Okay, I'm going to make these larger, so I'm going to make them 60 font. And I'm going to center them in my my chart. That one looks good. That looks good. And I'm actually going to make this row orange just to make it stand out a little bit. Okay, that looks great. Now I want to give my table a heading. So I'm going to use my shape tool again. And I'm going to label this types of angles. I'm going to make the background black and my font white. And I'm going to make my font larger, center it, and just change. Okay, so now I have that image. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to File, download that image, and I'm going to download it as a JPEG. But before I do that, I want to give it a title. So I'm just going to label this Types of Angles Chart. Okay, so now I can File, download, and JPEG. All right, so now let's go back to my notebook. I'm going to add a new page, and I'm going to get rid of the text boxes. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose Insert Image, and I'm going to upload that from computer, and that's going to be under my downloads. So you'll find the download that you're looking for, you'll click it, and you'll click Open. And now I have that image here on my page. So when my students receive this template, all they need to do is select this text box option or the shape option, drag, and then they can start entering in their information. Less than 90 degrees, more than 90, and then right is equal to 90. And then they can use their line tool here to draw their angles. Okay. Okay. So there's a few different examples of different types of templates you can create for your interactive notebook. So let's talk about how you can go about and actually give your interactive notebook to your students to use the templates that you've just created. There's two different ways that I would recommend sharing this out. The first is that you can create an assignment or in Classroom, Google Classroom, and you can make a copy for each student. So this is a slide deck. So let's take a look at what that would look like. If I go to my classroom, I'm going to choose this class. Okay. So now that I'm in my classroom, I'm going to select the classwork link. I'm going to create, and I'm going to create an assignment. And I'm going to title this Interactive Notebook. You can add instructions if needed. I'm going to select the add, and I'm going to select Google Drive. Because I was recently working on this, I can choose that right from here, from this pop-up. Now, if it wasn't something I was recently working on, I can select my drive and I can actually search for that file, okay? Now, next to the file name, you'll notice this little drop-down menu. So right now it's set to students can view file. What I want to set it as is make a copy for each student. Okay, it's going to be an ungraded. There's not going to be a due date. I may assign it to a topic if I had topics assigned. Other than that, I'm going to click Assign. So now what my students can do is they can jump on Google Classroom, and once they activate or once they access their assignment, they will have a copy waiting for them. So that's one way of creating a copy for your students. Let's talk about another way that you could do this. You could actually use this share button here at the top. And when you click that, you can actually generate a link that you can share out with others. This is nice if you have little ones that also need parent support, because maybe parents aren't accessing Google Classroom, but you still want them accessing resources. This is a wonderful way to share that link out so parents are able to help their little ones with their interactive pieces of the notebook. The first thing you're really going to want to pay attention to is who has access to your link. So right here, if I click the change link, I can decide who has access to this link. If you are sharing it with parents, you're going to want to make sure that it's set with this anyone with the link. That means anybody that you have shared with the link with can view it. Okay. Right now, mine is set for the Moric, so anybody with a Moric email address can access this. I'm going to change it to anyone with a link. So now I have that link set so it's public. I'm going to copy and click Done. I'm going to open a new tab and I'm actually going to paste that link into that new tab. And at the end, you'll notice this word edit. I'm going to delete edit and everything that comes after that. And I'm going to change that to say copy, and I'm going to hit enter on my keyboard. So now what I've done is I have created a link that I can share with families or students. But when they enter this link or when they click on this link, this is the image that they're going to be prompted with. They are not going to be able to access that document or that slide deck until they have made a copy for themselves. So this is a great way to force your students or your families to make a copy. And it works on docs, it works on sheets and slides. So it's a great workaround. If you're wanting your students to have their own templates, but you don't want to have to remind them that they have to make a copy, this will force them to make a copy. So then I can share that link out wherever I see fit. So that's it for interactive notebooks. I hope that you have found this helpful. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the chat box. I'm going to be answering them as we wrap up here with our time. Thank you for joining me today and taking time out of your summer. Good luck in the new school year. Please reach out if you have any questions or I can help in any way. Thank you again.